is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my spoiler-free review for Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko, which is the sequel and final book in the Raybearer duology. So we will also be wrapping up this duology today and giving my final rating for this series as a whole. I will have the content warnings I can find linked down below in the description along with links to some resources, and let's go ahead and get into it. And Raybearer is a West African fantasy that follows our main character Tarisai, who has been raised in isolation by her mother, who was often absent from her childhood. When she reaches the right age, her mother sends her to the capital to compete with other children for a spot on the Crown Prince's Council, and each member gets connected to the others through the Ray, which creates a very deep bond between all of the members, and this is a closeness that Tarisai craves. However, her mother made a wish for her to kill the Crown Prince, and she is being compelled to obey this wish. So Raybearer was one of my favorite books that I read back in 2021. I believe it was my second favorite book of 2021, but my top three were all really close that year. Like, I read a lot of good things in 2021, but when I think back on that year, those top three books really do stand out, and I do specifically connect them to that year in my brain. And Raybearer was definitely one of them, and I realized that this year, 2025, I have the chance, the opportunity to read sequels to all three of my top three books of 2021 this year in honor of them. Because not only were they my top three, but they did save my reading year that year, and also in a lot of ways kind of just my relationship with reading in general. So that brought me to Redemptor, and by all means I should have had this book read a long time ago, around the time that it came out, and I actually did read it and I got pretty far. But I was also trying to do a reading vlog for it, and I got sick in the middle of the vlog, stopped filming it, never went back, and I told myself that I would go back and finish this book and finish that vlog for way too long, and eventually it just became clear that I needed to throw out that vlog and restart this, of which I did, and now it is done. And let's go ahead and start by talking about the characters, and we are really just going to be talking about our main character and also my favorite character today, Tarisai. Because I missed her so much. She is one of my favorite characters that I have ever read, and this book was no exception to that. I loved following her journey in here so much. It very much felt like we picked up where she left off character growth-wise in book one and then just continued along with it. And we got to see her rule and thrive, but also really struggle at the same time, because there is like this grief and this darkness that constantly surrounds her, and it is a lot to navigate, especially combined with the politics of it all with her new position. Like, there is a focus on mental health in this book that I really did appreciate, and there are these beings from the underworld in this book who also kind of surface her intrusive thoughts, and one of my favorite parts of this book was reading her just like overcome and stand up to them. It did feel very real in terms of intrusive thoughts, and I've just loved everything that we've gotten from her in terms of character growth and exploration throughout both of these books, and I just really do love her a lot. As for the rest of the characters, there are a lot of them. There have always been a lot, and now there are even more. But it also does narrow it down to a handful of characters who are like our main side characters, and I do feel like we got to know them really well. But that does unfortunately mean that we know very little about everyone else, and I thought that in book one, and I was hoping to see more in the sequel, and we didn't really do that in the way that I was dreaming of, and honestly, that's okay. We don't necessarily need to. Like, I don't think this book was missing that or really needed it, but it does feel like a lot when there are so many names and characters in the story. But for the most part, this did very much feel like Tarisai's book, and again, I love her. I am very much okay with that. And we did get to know some of those characters better in this book, and we got some newer characters as well, and we now know them better than some of the characters in book one. And they were really interesting, and I'm also just gonna give some shout outs here to some of the characters that I really enjoyed. So shout out to Dio, first and foremost. He is pretty amazing. We also have Eileen, who I really liked in this book, and I do feel like we got a lot of her, and I love to see it. We also have Sanjeet and Kira, the crocodile, and also Mean Ja. And those last two names that I just said, I really loved getting to know both of them. Again, they were very interesting, and I feel like we saw a lot of them in this book, and I am very happy about that. And speaking of Sanjeet, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the romance, because while I liked them in book one, I didn't didn't like them that much, but I was more so content with them because I just loved everything about that book and they were a part of it. But I do feel like I liked them more here, which is weird because their relationship was kind of messy. But I feel like the romance moments that they did have in here were really strong in terms of like, I don't know, concept and also just quality. But one of the many things that I love about this book and the series as a whole is that it does showcase a variety of different types of love. There's romance, there's the love between the council members, there's found family. And while some of these relationships might fall under like the same umbrella category in terms of love, I think this book does a really good job of making the love in each relationship feel different and feel really special. And we do see Tarisai navigate a lot of different personalities and relationships in this book as a whole, and it was all so interesting, and there are some really complex relationships in here as well. Especially as we see Tarisai reflect and eventually come to terms with her past and like everything that's happened to her and all that she's done. As for the world itself, it is one of my favorites that I've ever read, and I think I actually forgot how much I loved all the fantasy and magic in this series until I was reading it again in here, and it was all so cool. And I loved getting to see more places, and there's also a lot to love about the culture as well. But it is all so captivating, and I've always really loved the atmosphere of this series and how it combines with the writing style and just how everything comes together as a whole. One of my favorite parts of Raybearer was also the storytelling and music aspect, and that's very much still present in Redemptor as well. This book also does have a major focus on classism, and you get to see the characters fight back against it, and you also see different ways of doing so through the crocodile, but also through Tarisai, who is in this position of power, and a lot of the storyline does surround this and explore this, and again, really interesting. As for the rest of the storyline, it's a lot of character exploration into Tarisai, and it's a lot of watching her navigate and form relationships, and also just watching her navigate her new position and her new reality as well, because there is also a lot of build up to the underworld, which did happen later in this book than I thought it would after finishing book one. Like, I kind of thought this whole book would be in the underworld, and it's not, even though there are always elements of it there and present and relevant and kind of just like looming over her and the rest of the characters. But even though wasn't what I expected, I do feel like it was given the right amount of time, which is not something that I'm sure that I would have said back when I tried to read this book for the first time in 2022. Because back then, even though I was still enjoying everything else, I really just wanted to get to that part. But me in 2025 very much did just want to settle down into everything this book had to offer more equally than back then. And when we finally got to the underworld, I still had that same anticipation for it. Like, I did accidentally make myself wait 3 to 4 years to get to that part, and I really loved everything that this book did with the underworld, especially with how it tied into Tarisai's character growth and journey. And yeah, I was invested and immersed in everything about this, if you couldn't already tell, and it was just so amazing to get lost in and settle into this series all over again. Like, I am so glad that the maid and the crocodile exists, because I am not ready to be done with this universe yet, like, at all. And I ended up giving Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko 5 out of 5 stars, which makes my final rating for this duology very easy, because I also gave Raybearer 5 stars, so my rating for this duology as a whole is going to be 5 out of 5 stars. And that just feels so correct. It is definitely one of my favorite series of all time, and also 2 of my favorite books individually as well, because they do also feel different from one another, but I feel like they both really succeeded at what they set out to do, and just like with all of the stories that they wanted to tell. And I feel like Redemptor not only continued, wrapped up, and reflected upon book 1, but I also feel like it expanded upon it and did its own thing. So my goal to honor my top 3 books of 2021 is off to an extremely strong start so far, and hopefully that keeps going. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer the question that'll be around here if you want to do that. And hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye.